The heavy drapes of the chamber muffled the distant clatter of armored footsteps in the grand hall beyond. Lady Margaret sat with a poised elegance that belied the turmoil beneath her composed exterior. The flickering candlelight danced across the delicate parchment she unfolded, revealing hastily sketched maps and cryptic notes penned in a hurried hand. Across from her, Aveline leaned forward, her piercing grey eyes narrowing as she absorbed every detail. The air between them was thick with unspoken tension, the quiet danger of this secret meeting palpable in the shadows. "These are the movements reported within the Baron's court," Lady Margaret whispered, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "They plan to marshal forces at dawn. If we do not act swiftly, the rebellion will be crushed before it truly begins." Aveline's fist clenched, the leather of her glove creaking softly. The knowledge was both a boon and a burden, an opportunity wrapped in peril. "How can we be sure you aren't leading us into a trap?" she asked, her tone sharp but not unkind. "Your loyalty to the nobles is known." Margaret's hazel eyes glistened with a mixture of regret and resolve. "I am a daughter of the court, yes, but I see the cruelty and the suffering it inflicts. I cannot stand by while innocent lives are ground beneath their heels. I risk everything by aiding you." The weight of her words settled heavily upon the room. Aveline's mind raced, trusting a noblewoman was a gamble that could cost them dearly, yet such intelligence was invaluable. "We will take what you offer, but we watch closely, Margaret. One misstep and this alliance ends." Outside, the village lay swathed in darkness, the only light the faint glow of forge fires and flickering torches carried by sentries. At the forge, Aveline paused her hammering, the metallic ring echoing in the quiet night. The warmth of molten steel contrasted starkly with the cold unease settling in her chest. Could a noblewoman truly stand with them? Or was this another trap woven by the Baron's cunning? Jacques, ever vigilant, paced the rebel camp's tent, his lean frame tense beneath the worn leather of his jerkin. Elise stood nearby, her fiery red hair a vivid slash against the muted canvas, her green eyes bright with determination yet shadowed by doubt. A messenger arrived abruptly, breathless and furtive, bearing a sealed note from Lady Margaret. The room hushed as Jacques broke the wax seal, scanning the words quickly. "Margaret warns of an impending raid on the eastern farms," Jacques announced, voice low but urgent. "We must prepare ambushes." Elise nodded, stepping forward. This news could turn the tide if we can trust it. The rebel leaders shared glances, a mixture of hope and suspicion tightening their features. Trust was a fragile currency in these desperate times. Late that night, beneath a sky thick with stars, Aveline met Lady Margaret again in the secret refuge of the garden behind the manor. The air was cool and damp, redolent with the scent of wet earth and blooming nightshade. Margaret's voice was barely a whisper as she revealed the personal sacrifices she made to aid the rebellion. "I am watched," she confessed. "Every step I take risks exposure. Should the Baron discover my betrayal, death will be swift and certain." Aveline reached out, her soot-streaked hand brushing Margaret's gloved fingers. "Your courage is rare, and it gives us strength. But know this, if you betray us, the consequences will be dire." Margaret met her gaze steadily. "I have no desire to see your cause fail." As they parted, the weight of their fragile alliance settled over them both. The rebellion was no longer a simple fight of peasants against nobles. It was a complex web of shifting loyalties and secret dangers. In the forge the next dawn, Aveline hammered steadily, the clang of steel a steady heartbeat in the stillness. Her mind churned with doubts and determination. The shadows of betrayal loomed close, yet the fire within her burned brighter. She would wield this new alliance carefully, forging hope from uncertainty, steel from shadows. The coming days would test not only their strength, but the very nature of trust in a world where enemies wore the faces of friends. The Blacksmith Queen's path was fraught with peril, and every secret whispered in the shadows could either save them or shatter their fragile dream of freedom. As the sun rose, casting long golden beams across the village, Aveline stood tall, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the fate of their rebellion would be decided. The game of shadows had begun, and she was determined to emerge victorious. But beneath her fierce resolve, a single question burned. Could trust truly be forged in the fires of deceit? And with that haunting question, leaving the reader poised on the edge of revelation and danger, eager to turn the page to the next chapter of rebellion and secrets. The first light of dawn crept cautiously over the horizon, casting a pale, sickly glow on the ravaged landscape. The rebel village that had once thrummed with life was now a grim tableau of destruction and death. Plumes of smoke curled lazily upwards from the blackened remnants of wooden homes, their skeletal frames silhouetted starkly against the waking sky. The acrid scent of burning wood mingled with the heavier, more dreadful odors of charred flesh and spilled blood, choking the air and making the morning chill even harder to bear. Aveline stood at the edge of the village, her boots sinking slightly into the ash-strewn earth. The soot from the forge clung stubbornly to her skin, mingling with the grime and tears that streaked her face. Her piercing grey eyes scanned the devastation, each ruined hut and lifeless form a cruel testament to the violence wrought by Baron de Clermont's forces. The horror that unfolded before her struck deep into her heart, yet beneath the raw pain, a fierce ember of resolve began to glow. She moved through the wreckage, her footsteps faltering as she came upon the body of a child. The small figure lay tangled among the rubble, a tangle of dark hair matted with soot and dust. Aveline knelt, her calloused hands trembling as she brushed dirt from the child's face. The stillness was suffocating, the silence broken only by the distant crackle of dying fires and the low murmur of survivors beginning to stir. Around her, the villagers emerged from hiding, their faces etched with shock and disbelief. Mothers clutched broken children, men stared blankly at the carnage, and the elderly wept openly for the lost. Jax appeared at her side, his lean frame tense but controlled. His quick eyes swept the scene, noting the wounded, the dead, and the few who remained unscathed. "We must move quickly," he urged quietly. "There may be more coming." Aveline nodded, rising to her feet. Her voice, steady but heavy with grief, carried over the hushed crowd. "This is the price of our defiance," she said, "but it is not the end. We will honor those lost by fighting harder, by forging a future where such cruelty cannot thrive." The survivors began to organize, tending to the wounded and salvaging what they could from the wreckage. The sky above darkened with the approach of storm clouds, mirroring the tumultuous emotions roiling within the rebel camp. Elise moved among the people, her fiery red hair a beacon amidst the despair. She gathered them as twilight fell, her voice rising in passionate speech that rekindled a flicker of hope amid the ashes. "We stand at a crossroads," Elise declared, her green eyes blazing. "They sought to break our spirit, to silence our cry for justice. But we are not defeated. We are the steel forged in fire, unyielding and strong. We are the Blacksmith Queen's people, and we will rise." Her words ignited a fierce determination among the rebels, binding them together in shared purpose despite the staggering losses. Aveline felt the weight of leadership settle more heavily upon her shoulders, the cost of rebellion laid bare before her. Yet within that burden, she found a renewed strength, a steel forged not just in the fires of the forge, but in the crucible of sacrifice and hope. As night enveloped the village, the flickering flames of campfires cast long shadows on the faces of those who remained. Whispers of the fallen mingled with vows of vengeance and justice, carrying into the dark like the steady beat of a hammer on anvil. The road ahead was fraught with peril, but the Blacksmith Queen and her people would walk it together, unbroken and undeterred. The massacre was more than a tragedy. It was a rallying cry. The rebellion would endure, and from the ashes of loss would rise a crown forged in steel and sacrifice. But the question lingered in every heart: how many more would pay the price before freedom could be won? And so the fire of rebellion burned brighter still, tempered by grief, but unextinguished. The camp lay shrouded in an uneasy silence, broken only by the occasional crackle of a fire struggling against the chill night air. Aveline's footsteps echoed softly on the hard-packed earth as she made her way through the cluster of tents, her mind a tempest of suspicion and dread. Word had spread like wildfire. Betrayal had found its way into their midst. The very foundation of the rebellion trembled under the weight of deceit. Inside the largest tent, a grim gathering awaited her, the core leaders of the rebellion, faces drawn tight with worry. Jax stood near the entrance, his lean frame rigid, eyes sharp as he scanned the perimeter beyond. Elise stood by the firelight, her green eyes bright but shadowed with anxiety, her fiery spirit barely contained. Aveline, Jax greeted quietly, his voice low and steady despite the tension. "We've uncovered the traitor." Aveline nodded, her grey eyes hardening. "Bring them in. Let us end this tonight." Moments later, the accused was led inside, a man once trusted, a friend to many, now shackled by the weight of his treachery. His face was pale, sweat beading on his brow as he met Aveline's piercing gaze. "Why?" she demanded, voice sharp but controlled. "Why betray us?" The traitor's eyes flickered with a mixture of fear and defiance. The nobles offered gold, safety. "I had no choice." Aveline's heart clenched. The cost of rebellion was never just blood and steel. It was trust, fragile and precious. Outside, Jax paced the perimeter, the shadows of the forest pressing close as if to swallow him whole. Memories of distant wars haunted his steps, the screams, the loss, the betrayal. Now that same shadow had crept into their sanctuary. His grip tightened on his bow, every sense alert to the slightest disturbance. In the village square, Elise stood before a crowd rattled by fear and doubt. Her voice rang clear and strong, weaving hope through the murmurs of despair. "We will not falter. This betrayal is a wound, but it will not be our undoing. Stand with me, stand with Aveline. Our cause is just and our spirit unbreakable." Her words sparked flickers of courage, though the undercurrent of suspicion lingered like a storm cloud on the horizon. Meanwhile, in a shadowed chamber away from prying eyes, Lady Margaret met with Aveline. Their alliance was tentative, built on necessity and fraught with unspoken questions. "This betrayal," Margaret whispered, "shows how precarious your position is. You must be cautious whom you trust, even among your closest." Aveline met her gaze steadily. "And yet, without trust, we are nothing. We must find a way to mend what has been broken, or all will be lost." Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line, the weight of noble expectations and personal convictions pressing down on her. As night deepened, the rebellion's heart beat with uncertainty. The shadows of betrayal had cast a pall over their cause, threatening to unravel the fragile threads of unity they had so painstakingly woven. Yet, in Aveline's unwavering resolve, a beacon flickered, a promise that from these darkest moments, strength and solidarity could yet be forged anew. The path ahead was perilous, with enemies seen and unseen. But the Blacksmith Queen's fire burned still, tempered by hardship, and ready to ignite the rebellion's indomitable spirit once more. The dawn would bring new trials, but also the chance for redemption and hope. And as Aveline stood beneath the cold stars, she vowed silently, no shadow, no betrayal, could extinguish the flame of freedom they fought to kindle. With her heart steeled and her mind sharp, she prepared to face the fractures within and the storm beyond, a leader forged not just by steel, but by the unyielding will to rise above the darkness. The forge's heat pressed close, the air thick with the scent of molten metal and smoke. Aveline stood at her anvil, muscles taut as she drove her hammer down upon the glowing steel. Each resounding clang echoed like a heartbeat in the quiet night, a relentless rhythm that matched the turmoil within her soul. The village had long since fallen silent, save for the occasional crackle of fire or the distant howl of a night wind. But Aveline's world was consumed by the steady beat of her hammer and the weight of the decisions that pressed upon her like the heavy bellows, stoking the forge's flames. Her arms moved with practiced precision, shaping the raw metal into blades and arrowheads, tools of war born from fire and sweat. Yet beneath the determination that drove her hands, a shadow of doubt gnawed at her spirit. What cost would this rebellion claim? How many lives would be lost before freedom could be won? The faces of those she led, the villagers who trusted her to lead them against the ruthless Baron de Clermont, haunted her thoughts. She had become more than a blacksmith's daughter. She was a beacon of hope, a symbol of resistance. But the crown she bore was invisible and heavy. Jack's footsteps echoed softly as he approached the forge, his lean form silhouetted against the flickering torchlight. "Aveline," he said quietly, wiping soot from his brow, "we must speak." The men grow restless, and the Baron's forces tighten their grip. She nodded, setting her hammer down and wiping her hands on her leather apron. "I know," she replied, voice low but firm. "Tonight we prepare. Tomorrow we strike again." They moved to a rough-hewn table strewn with maps and crude sketches of the noble stronghold. Jack has traced a finger along the routes, outlining possible approaches and retreats. The weight of strategy settled over them, a heavy shroud that neither could fully lift. "If we fail," Jack said, eyes meeting hers with a rare flicker of vulnerability, "it will mean the end of everything we've fought for." Aveline's gaze hardened. "Then we must not fail, not now, not ever." Outside, the village stirred as Elise stood atop a makeshift platform, her voice rising in a fiery speech that cut through the night's chill. Her words carried the raw passion of one who had suffered and survived noble cruelty, igniting the hearts of those who listened. "We fight not just for ourselves," she declared, "but for those yet unborn. For justice, for freedom, for a future where no child will tremble beneath the boot of tyranny." Cheers erupted, a swelling tide of hope that momentarily eased the burdens pressing on Aveline's chest. She stepped outside, watching the flames of torches dance in the eyes of her people. Their faces roughened by toil and hardship, but alight with newfound courage reminded her why she must endure. Later, beneath the quiet shadows of the village chapel, Father Benot sat with Aveline, his weathered hands folded in his lap. "The path you walk is fraught with peril," he said softly. "But remember, even the darkest night must yield to dawn." She closed her eyes, drawing strength from his words yet feeling the deep apex of loneliness that leadership exacted. "How do I carry their hopes when my own heart falters?" He smiled gently. "By forging your spirit as you do your steel, with fire, with patience, and with unwavering resolve." As dawn crept over the horizon, casting pale light upon the village, Aveline returned to her forge. The crown of steel she sought to shape was not merely a symbol. It was the embodiment of sacrifice and the promise of change. With every strike, she forged not only weapons, but the future of her people, a future built on the fierce determination that would carry them through the trials yet to come. The weight of the crown pressed down, but Aveline bore it with the strength of a queen born from fire and struggle, ready to lead her rebellion toward the uncertain dawn. The moon hung low and silver over the dense woods bordering the village, casting long, trembling shadows among the ancient pines. Aveline's breath came in quiet, measured gusts, the chill night air biting at her soot-streaked face as she moved swiftly through the underbrush. She paused beside a moss-covered stone, her piercing grey eyes scanning the darkness. From the silence emerged a figure, tall and lean, the faint glint of chainmail catching the moonlight, Sir Henry. Henry's expression was a turbulent sea of emotions, conflict, longing, and an unspoken fear. "Aveline," he whispered, voice thick with restraint, "this path you lead, it is perilous. For you, for me, for all who follow your flame." She met his gaze, the flicker of the fire from her forge echoing in her eyes. "And yet, it is the only path to justice, Henry. Must duty forever bind us to chains?" The knight's hands clenched and unclenched, the weight of his noble birth pressing heavily upon his shoulders. "My heart is torn between honor to my class and the truth I see in your cause and in you." Aveline's pulse quickened. The forbidden nature of their meeting, the risk of discovery, was a silent shadow between them. We stand at a crossroads, Henry. Our choices define not only ourselves but the future of this land. Their meetings became secret and fraught with tension. Beneath the shroud of night, words of love intertwined with whispered strategies. Henry shared glimpses of the noble court's machinations, while Aveline revealed the resolve and pain driving the rebellion. Yet each encounter edged closer to peril, the fragile thread of trust stretched taut. Back in the village, the forge blazed late into the night. The rhythmic pounding of hammer against steel was a steady drumbeat to Aveline's thoughts, each strike a vow to her people, and to the uncertain love that warmed her from within. Under the glow, her face bore the marks of strength and vulnerability, a queen in the making yet still a woman bound by hope and fear. Jax, ever watchful, sensed the change in Aveline. From the shadows of the village outskirts, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. The loyalty that had bound him to Aveline since childhood now wrestled with doubt. Aveline, he muttered under his breath one evening, cloaked in the dark, be wary of hearts that beat with divided loyalties. In council chambers lit by flickering candles, rebel leaders debated fiercely. Plans to strike the nobles were laid bare, strategies weighed with the heavy knowledge of lives at stake. Yet beneath the surface, Aveline's secret weighed upon her a delicate balance between love and war. Henry's name was a whisper only she dared to speak aloud. The forbidden romance was a fragile bloom amid the thorns of rebellion. Each stolen moment was a risk, each shared glance a step closer to discovery. Yet in their union lay a potent hope, a bridge between worlds long divided. Could love, born in shadows and forged in steel, survive the coming storm? As dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of amber and rose, Aveline stood at the forge's threshold, the crown of steel still a distant dream. Her heart beat fiercely, torn between the fire of rebellion and the tender ache of a noble heart divided. The path ahead was uncertain, but her resolve remained unbroken. With love and steel entwined, she would face whatever dawn might bring. The village hall was thick with tension, the air heavy and charged as voices rose and fell in heated debate. Aveline stood at the center, her piercing grey eyes scanning the room filled with rough-hewn men and women, leaders of various factions within the rebellion. Their faces were lined with hardship, their voices sharp with frustration and fear. The flickering torchlight cast deep shadows on the stone walls, mirroring the darkness that threatened to unravel their fragile alliance. "We cannot afford this division," Aveline said firmly, stepping forward to silence an argument spiraling out of control. "The nobles wait for us to break ourselves apart. They will crush us if we do not stand united." A grizzled man with a scar across his cheek spat on the floor. "Easy for you to say, Blacksmith Queen. Some of us don't trust your plans. You think a crown forged from weapons will lead us to victory." Jax moved to her side, his lean frame radiating calm authority. "We all want freedom," he said quietly, "but we must choose our battles wisely. Disagreements will destroy us faster than any noble sword." The room fell into uneasy silence. Aveline's gaze softened as she looked around, recognizing the wariness behind the anger. "We fight for the same dream. Let us find a way to make it real together." Later, as dawn broke over the village, the training fields came alive with the sounds of clashing wooden swords and shouted commands. Jax directed small groups of peasants, many of whom had never held a weapon before. Their breath formed clouds in the cold morning air, muscles straining with each swing and parry. Aveline moved among them, her soot-streaked face set with fierce determination. "Remember," she told a young man struggling to keep pace, "steel is not just a weapon. It is a symbol of our strength and our will to be free." The sun climbed higher, casting a pale light over the gathered rebels. Elise stood on a makeshift platform in the village square, her red hair a fiery banner against the grey sky. Her voice rang out clear and passionate as she addressed the crowd. "We fight not only for our lives, but for the future of our children, for the women who have been silenced, and for the men who have been broken." This rebellion is our chance to forge a new world, one where justice is not a crown worn by the few, but a right shared by all. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Faces once hardened by despair now glimmered with hope. Aveline caught Jack's eye, a shared spark of resolve passing between them. In a quiet chamber away from the noise, Lady Margaret leaned close to Aveline, speaking in hushed tones. The Baron's forces are gathering faster than we feared. There is talk of mercenaries and reinforcements. You must prepare for a storm unlike any before. Aveline studied the nobleman's conflicted expression. Why help us? Because not all crowns are forged in cruelty, Margaret replied, her voice trembling with urgency. And because I believe in what you represent, a chance for change. But be warned, the path ahead is perilous. Night fell again, but the fire in Aveline's heart burned brighter than ever. The rebellion was no longer just a flicker. It was a gathering storm. Yet beneath the strength and unity, fragile tensions simmered, reminders that the greatest battles were not only against the nobles, but within their own ranks. As she prepared to face the coming war, Aveline knew the weight of leadership was not just in rallying swords, but in holding together the hearts and hopes of her people. The forge had taught her that steel must be tempered by fire to hold its strength. So too must the rebellion be tempered by unity to survive the storm. The night whispered of challenges ahead, but Aveline's resolve was unshaken. The Blacksmith Queen would not falter, not while the crown of steel waited to be claimed, and the dream of freedom burned in every rebel's heart. And yet, as the wind howled outside the village walls, a single question lingered in the shadows. Could the fragile unity forged in this gathering storm withstand the tempest that was coming? The answer would be written in blood and steel on the fields of battle yet to come.